Not that long ago, several of the Scandinavian central banks said, we made a mistake to try and go cashless. We're reversing it. And the reason is all around the world, you see these moments of disaster when the electricity stops working and the telecommunications stop working. And if you don't have cash, you're toast. For example, when the cyclones came through in New Zealand, the governor afterwards stood up and he said, the electricity didn't work. If we hadn't had cash, we would have been in real trouble. And it was the same thing in the floods or the hurricanes in Florida or North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. If you didn't have cash, the FEMA was giving out credit cards to use for emergency funding, but there was no electricity and no telecommunications. Nobody could use the credit cards, right? So if you're going to have a resilient economy, you have to have an analog option. Number one. But number two, if you look at the drain on our economy that comes from financial transactions, it's very high. If you're taking out 1 or 2 or even 3% in fees in every transaction, enough transactions, it's all gone. So I take 100 euros and I spend it and I spend it again and it circulates in the economy. After enough transactions, if it's electronic, it's all gone. It's a diminishing resource. If you're spending cash, no transaction fees. It just moves around. You still have 100 euros, right? The amount of money that the credit card or other financial transactions take out is astonishing. So South Dakota has 1 million people. Every year, $750 million goes out in financial transactions by the credit card companies. So let me give you one other reason. People who spend cash are much more careful about their purchases and much more thoughtful about what they're really spending and why they're spending. So you tend to be more prudent. The reason I'm so focused on it is if you look at the implementation of a digital control system, it cannot happen until we're 100% digital. So cash is a leakage that prevents total physical control or digital control. And I think that's imperative. When you have a governance system that wants complete control in a way that I would describe as absolutely evil, the last thing I want is for you to be stripped of all your freedoms by tricking you into an all-digital system. And unfortunately, what it means is that hotel is facilitating the push to complete tyranny. That's not their intention, I'm sure. So slavery is not convenient. And so the notion that this is somehow convenience is ridiculous, especially when you look at the money and the surveillance that's siphoned off. Because in a digital system, you're under complete surveillance. There's no privacy. In an analog system, you have the potential for a lot more privacy. And so what you're doing is you are allowing your enemy to track everything you're doing and what you're doing and how you're doing in a way that's going to hurt you. Is hurting you now, but you're disassociated from the connection between, your enemy. So you've seen the James Bond movies, right? And you know who Spectre is. So Spectre is this organized crime syndicate that is trying to run the world. Okay, when you give your child a smartphone, you're saying, here, I want Spectre to have 24/7, not only to you and see what you're doing and how you're doing, I want them to have 24/7 access to your subconscious, to influence what you think and what you want and what you feel. They can brainwash you. And so I'm going to give an intimate connection between Spectre and my child. Why would anyone do that? They wouldn't do that if they were rational. Guys in Silicon Valley will give their children a smartphone. They know what the world would have been like during COVID, for example, if all the lockdowns and other restrictions could have been implemented by a digital ID and programmable money. So the danger when you add a digital ID to programmable money, to, the data center, AI, and other hardware infrastructure you need to run a social credit system. When you add those three pieces together, you get an all-digital financial system that implements complete control. And if you look at the guys running things, they've been very clever. It's like, here's the herd, and they keep putting up sides of the corral, making you feel like it's convenient before they put in the fourth one and throw the trap. This is designed to be a global system. Meantime, you have many different cartels trying to be the one, so my cartel wants to control the digital ID system, and the healthcare, wants to use vaccine passports. So we're watching tremendous competition in industries and providers of who gets to define the digital ID and how it works and whatever. But essentially what everybody needs if they're going to have complete central control is they need a exceptionally precise, high quality digital ID system. And everything works off of that. The programmable money works off of that. The spatial control works after that. You have all these data centers built around the world to basically manage the data for the control grid. So the first thing is that digital ID, right? Because everything, the spatial control and the financial control work off of that. So it's the satellites, it's the telecommunications, including massive amounts of towers on the ground. We have something in America called flock cameras, basically cameras in local areas that read license plates and feed the information back. The big piece is the data centers, because you're collecting data in real time and having to then generate data in real time. And that requires tremendous amounts of data collection and analysis and generation. The primary goal of AI is control. It's not to make us more productive, it's to control. And it has other applications. But what AI is fantastic at is things that can be tracked mathematically. So that's financial transactions and also spatial control. Then you have a whole layer of hardware infrastructure to implement enforcement. And that's what they're building the robots and the drones for, is essentially, Tesla is saying they're going to make 1 million humanoid robots a year. So you can enforce whatever you need, but you can also replace any human you need. So, what these people are paid for is to say this stuff with a straight face. And I give them credit. I couldn't do it. So programmable money, I go back to COVID. If I'm putting you in a 15-minute city and I don't want you to be able to leave your 15-minute city, it won't work outside of your 15-minute city. And I can program very different rules for you than I program for me. So I can custom design the rules that enforce your existence. It can embed rules on where you can go, what you can eat, what you can do. It can punish you for what you say. It can arbitrarily increase your taxes if the state needs more money. It can shut down your account if they think that will slow down inflation. You just stop everybody from spending. And you can embed highly complex rule systems to manage each individual, as well as to manage groups of individuals and places, as well as, everybody. So now the bankers can not just run monetary policy, they can run fiscal policy through programmable money. If you look at the whole sort of Western world, they've so grown up with financial freedom that they can't fathom this. And of course, if you look at all the parts of the system, so we're watching QR codes and smartphones and crypto, you have all these different pieces that are being put into place. There are hundreds of them. And if you talk to each person, they'll tell you why this is more efficient and they like it. And what they're saying is legitimate, except they don't understand once you fuse it together, it's a digital concentration camp. And suddenly, if I don't like your social media posts, I can turn off your money. And I don't need a bureaucrat to do it. The software can do it. The media is not designed to tell us what's coming, unless that's desired. So the corporate media is dedicated to helping facilitate centralized control. So they're trying to herd us into the digital concentration camp. And that's what they're paid to do. And it's hard for many people to fathom that the media would systematically do something to intentionally poison or kill you. But they do. And, I've had lots of experience and proof of that. And the beauty of it, it's not me saying it. It's the governor of a Federal Reserve Bank or the president of Federal Reserve Bank. It's the head of the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. It's the deputy director at the IMF, and they're telling you what they're going to do. So in 2020, at the time, Augustine Carstens was the general manager for the BIS. Anyway, so he explains why he likes CBDC. Now, and I had never in my life heard a central banker tell the truth publicly. And I think one of the problems that has really expanded, it started with TV pretty badly, but then it went to, it got into radio and it went to smartphones. We're dealing with military-grade neurowarfare that is influencing what we think and we feel. And so it's making us feel that certain things are safe or okay when in fact they're not. So it's encouraging us to do certain health care, or to take pharmaceuticals that are very dangerous and are killing people. But, we've been literally brainwashed. But it was clear to me from 98 on, that's what they were going to try and do. They were absolutely clear. They were going to centralize control of all resources. And if you had been on the inside, you knew what they were up to. You're dealing with an effort to massively consolidate political and economic control. Here we are again, we're just starting into COVID 2.0, right? You shut down the straits, you bottleneck the straits, shut off the energy, and suddenly we've got gas rationing and spatial controls going in around the world. It's COVID 2.0. So we did health, now we're going to do transportation, right? We're going to do energy. It's clearly the next phase of the reset. That's what you see all over the world. So at the G20 meeting in September, you had Russia and China all pledge, and India all pledging allegiance to the BIS construct of, this control system. So everybody has their own version, but you have a lot of countries who say, we want to run our control grid. We don't want the City of London to run our control grid or the New York Fed to run our control grid. Well, there's a struggle not only between sort of nation states, there's a huge struggle between industries. So if you look at this, the war happening right now between the tech bros and the banks as to who's going to control, because we haven't talked about stablecoins and asset tokens. The next iteration of CBDC implementation is private CBDCs, which are far worse. They're far more ugly. If you think the central bank is scary, wait till you see, that stuff controlled by Mark Zuckerberg. And it's like, really? Do you want Palantir running your CBDC? So stablecoins, the world is rejecting buying treasury securities. But meantime, the US is spending money like a drunken sailor. So the question is, how do they sell more treasuries globally? And so you issue a stablecoin, which is collateralized dollar for dollar with essentially a short-term treasury bill, and then someone can use that stablecoin globally to transact. So they're going to offer stablecoins through the crypto rails to everybody around the world. So if you're in Bolivia or you're in Amsterdam and you don't want to use the euros or the Bolivian currency, you can use a stablecoin through the crypto rails and trade the dollar and transact with the dollar. But that dollar is not going to go into the banking system that's going to make loans. It's going to go to the treasury, which you use it to finance the next war.